everyone, it's Sharonda from Pay or Wait, and today we're going to be reviewing The Handmaid's Tale Season 3, Episode 8, Unfit. So I have to give everyone an apology. So, those of you who don't know, I have a lot of traveling coming up, so I was late with this week's episode because I actually went to LA to the Lion King premiere, and so I have been out of town. I didn't have time to record. My car kind of broke down before I even left, so I had to deal with all of that. So I apologize that this review is late, okay? I saw y'all comment on my Lion King review, like, where's my Handmaid's Tale? I'm gonna have it for you right now, and I'm also gonna rewatch or pre-watch the next week's episode so I can have that loaded up so it will load on time, because I will actually be in Comic-Con when that one comes out as well. So I apologize in advance. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again, y'all. I promise, because y'all, I was like, they gonna disown me because I don't have this review out. But y'all, so I watched this episode twice because I was livid. I'm still livid. I'm really upset. And I think, no, not that I think. I know after this episode, I'm done with June. She trash. I'm sorry. June is pure trash. I don't want nothing to do with her. I don't care what happens to her. I just hope that her children are okay. That's pretty much all the hope or the well wishes that I have for her. Because she is just, she pissed me off in this episode. So, the episode opens up of Andy, the handmaid. She is in labor right now. And so all of the handmaids are there helping her through her contractions and everything. And so we see that this is kind of when they're all together again after what transpired. When we found out that Of Messy was the one who gave Lydia the information in regards to the Martha who was feeding information to June. So the episode opens up and June is standing there watching them help of Andy through her contractions, and she's talking about the Martha who was murdered in the last episode, her previous life, about how she used to be like a mentor, that she was a sales manager, but now she's dead, and she's dead because of Messy, basically. When really, June, you had a part to play in that as well. But we'll talk about that as I dive a little bit deeper. So we see that Of Messy tries to go and talk to June, and her girl, she sidelined there real quick. She's like, don't talk to her. She ain't talking to you. And I was just like, you know what, girl, this is probably not the best time. You should probably give her a couple of weeks to get over this, because you really messed things up. But I still think that June has a large part to play in that. But when old girl bumped into her when she had the towels, and then when the one handmaid handed her some water and then she spit in it, I was just like, the disrespect that we have going on. And I was just like, okay, she probably deserved that. I was okay with it, but just as things continue to play on, I was just like, Of Messy didn't deserve this. And I can't believe that I'm even saying that, but she didn't deserve the treatment that she got in this episode. So we see that Janine sees what is happening, and she walks over to June, and she basically tells her, like, why are you guys being so mean? And then June just basically says, like, hey, she got this Martha killed, and she doesn't care about it, so she should have kept her effing mouth shut. And I was like, ooh, June is, like, still really pissed about this. And then we see that the girl drops, like, the little utensils or whatever was on the pan. There was, like, Of Matthew. And then I was just like, okay, y'all taking this a little bit too far, because I found it very ironic of how the girls have rallied behind June. But did y'all forget about how she got people burned? You know, when she pulled that last little revolution that she tried to pull with the handmaids and all of them got punished in front of her. I was just like, how quickly we forget. And so I think it was interesting that when Janine tells her, like, hey, you guys are being mean, she was just like, she did what Lydia told her to do. And at the end of the day, you can't really resist or say no to Lydia and what she, like, you know, wants you to do, because you know that there will be consequences. And so on one hand, it's kind of just like, we know that, like, she probably shouldn't have been doing everything that she was doing as far as, like, ratting everyone out, because she knew that there would have to be consequences for that as well. But I think that June does have to understand the pull that Lydia has, and that really no one can say no to anything that she asks of them. And so I found it very interesting that Janine is the one who Lydia was just so horrible to just a few episodes ago, that she clearly understands that she was following an order that was given to her, and there was really no way out of it. She did what she was told to do. So we see that Lydia confronts June and is just like, okay, call your friends off, stop this, like, right now. And then June kind of looks at her, with the little look that she always does. And then Lydia's like, you know what? I got another trip for you guys. And so they have June in the center. And I found it very interesting that Lydia is the only one who helps June realize that you had just as much an important role to play in this Martha's death as of Messi did, because at the end of the day, the Martha told you to lay low, to stop all of this because it was causing issues for Agnes or Hannah, whichever name you want to refer to her as. And June didn't care because June always puts her own self-interest first, and she does not ever think about the consequences. And she knows that there are no real consequences for her, because when she tells Aunt Lydia, like, are you gonna cut my tongue out? Like, it'd be kind of hard to do that if they need me on television again. And so June knows the leverage that she has, that she's important, and that really she's untouchable at this point. And we've been clearly shown from season 1 to season 2 and now in season 3 that there are no real repercussions for June. And as we see how the details play out throughout the course of the episode, how she really is privileged as a handmaid, even though there's a lot of limitation and restrictions to her life, she does go through life in a better light than what ends up ultimately happening to Matthew. And so I like how she tells her, like, you have a role to play in this, and you need to confess and you need to admit your part in this. And so June does that, but it really hits her when she starts talking about, you have also wronged Agnes, because she had a relationship with that Martha. She cared for that Martha, and now she's dead. She's had to be uprooted again, away from her new friends, her new family, and you caused that. And in your own self-interest of you trying to find your daughter to just see her, you've also caused another traumatic experience for her that she now has to deal with. And so I thought it was so important that needed to be said to June, that she needs to understand that her actions affect someone else. And it was more important to bring up her daughter, because that's the only other life that she cares about outside of her own in Gilead. So we see that when June's kind of confessing or testifying, however you want to call it, she then outs of Matthew and says that of Matthew needs to confess that she's had bad thoughts about harming the child, that she didn't want her baby, which is like a huge offense, because you are here to reproduce, to create new children of Gilead, to continue, all of this going. And so to see how of Matthew, how she's like struggling, she's having anxiety in this episode, and when she's just saying, like, I only thought about it for a moment, like, it just feels different than my other pregnancies. And she talks about how she was afraid that this child will be a girl, unlike the previous boys that she had, and she was worried about what her daughter's life would be like in Gilead, which is an issue that everyone thinks about, which is why June wanted to get Nicole out of there, and why Serena helped her do that, because they know that life is not great for women in this society. And so we get to see a more human aspect of Messi, because we know that we think that she's so, like, she believes in what she's doing, but really she has the same concerns as everyone else. She just feels that the best way is to comply and to do what they tell her to do, because that's her only route of survival that she sees being in Gilead. And so after that happens, she ends up telling June, like, thank you for telling me about Matthew. We don't know what could have happened, and because you brought this up, at least now we know. So we see that June ends up getting called back to go back to Andy is in labor now. She's going to give birth to the baby. And as she does, the baby is stillborn. We see that the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. So it seems as though that the baby actually ended up choking while she was going through the birth, which I found weird, because we saw that June and them, they went to the doctor's office for checkups and things like that. They have the technology, but they don't have the great minds. We saw how to save baby Angela. They had to get one of the Marthas who was a pediatric surgeon. That was how they were able to save her life. But I still find it interesting how I was just like, you guys couldn't see, you didn't do an ultrasound to see that the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck. I just found that a little weird, but it's closer to the book, because in the book, you know, a lot of the babies, even though they were able to conceive, a lot of the babies were born with defects or stillborn. So I think it's interesting how they're now starting to introduce these different aspects into the TV show in the third season. But that still troubled me a little bit, that no one knew that is what was happening with the baby, that there was no ultrasound that was done, especially since she was having complications. So we see that June goes to look at the baby, but Lydia takes Matthew out because it's just causing her even more anxiety to think that could be my child. And to see how the woman who just went through giving birth like rushes out of bed, like, no, give me my daughter, she's probably just sleeping, to see how traumatic, not only you're already having to deal with the thought of your baby being ripped away from you, but now, you know, seeing that your baby was born dead, and how June's reaction to all of this was just how she thinks that it's the better alternative. It's better for this baby to die than to be brought up in the society. So I think it's interesting how the women have different viewpoints of what this baby's death means. And so we see that Commander Lawrence goes to ask June, you know, what happens, is it a boy or a girl? You know, my wife would like to know. And then she was like, the baby's dead. And he was just like, well, you probably shouldn't tell her that. And so he asked her to basically sit with his wife. He thinks that she's good with her, that, you know, it will be something that's good for his wife, because, you know, he was upset because she took her out into the world without telling him. And then June basically is like, okay, well, it's clear that you love your wife and you don't give a crap about any of the rest of us, but like this society that you've built, you're killing her, you're confining her, you're taking like what little joy that she has left away. And so when he was just like, did that make you feel good? I was just like, June, you so quick to tell other people about what they're doing, how they should be feeling. Ma'am, can you take some of your own advice? Can you just figure life out? June just has been really annoying me this season. And then when she tells him that, I'm just like, yeah, like Commander Lawrence ain't ish, but he's trying here and you're just like rubbing it in his face. And I just feel like it just wasn't the time to make this point. I just don't understand what your purpose was. She's so good about trying to make everyone else feel like crap that she can't even do that for herself or see how her actions affect others. And I thought it was even more disrespectful in the beginning of the episode when she basically asked him like, hey, do you have any information on where the Mackenzies went about my daughter? And I was just like, ma'am, why do you always feel so comfortable asking for so much, or taking this good setup that you have for granted, that you just think you could barge into this man's office and just think that he's going to give you all of this information? I was just like, you can't give it a couple of days? Like, you can't even process that this lady just died? That do you really think he's going to risk his life, his wife's life, the other people's lives, just because you want more information? Because clearly you never learned your lesson. Just chill. Like, you're so quick to react and you don't think things through. Oh, she get on my damn nerves. But we see that we get a little bit into Lydia'S backstory, which is what we've all been waiting for. And so we see that Lydia was actually a teacher. We're introduced to her teaching a young boy named Ryan. His mom is late picking him up. She's asking him questions. She's really good with the kids. And I was like, okay, like it's almost like you have a heart, Aunt Lydia. And so the principal comes and basically says like, hey, you know, it's like it's after 6. Like, where is she? And she's like, I've called, I've left messages, and I don't know, like, you know, where she is. And so we see that she's going to take him home, and she's like, hey, I made some chili for you. You know, I'll make sure that you get home safe. I just want to make sure that you have a proper meal, because she talks about how the mom only sends him to school sometimes with chips for lunch, that she's very negligent. And so before she can take him home, we see that the mom shows up. She tells her that she has some issues at work. She's so sorry that she's late. And so she invites them over to have chili. But did y'all catch like the little flirting that she was doing with the principal? They was doing their little Bible verses with each other. I was like, okay, you found another man of the Lord, okay? But I was like, I saw that little flirting there. He was like flirting with you, Aunt Lydia. Like, go ahead and go in for the kill. But we see that she ends up talking to the mom. She makes dinner for them. And then basically the mom is kind of telling her that she's like a bartender. The guy got kind of disrespectful with her. She threw a drink on him. And so, you know, she just talks about how, like, Ryan's dad isn't in their lives. Like, all that he has is her. And then she's basically like, this is the best that we got. And then Liz's like, no, you can be better. And so they form this relationship with one another. We see that she does Christmas with them. She gives them like Christmas gifts, and that they even gave her a gift. She gave her some makeup, did a little makeup on her face, and she tells her like, hey, like, you need to get out there as well. You need to put yourself back out there. I want to see you happy and someone to love. And she was like, there's nothing wrong with giving love. I don't need anyone else. I'm fine the way that I am. But we see that her talking to her, it kind of makes Lydia take her advice, and then she ends up going on a date with who? The principal. So they went on a nice little New Year's Eve date. She was looking all cute, had her hair all down and her makeup on. I said, okay, Lydia, you still like ish, but I was like, I'll be here with you since this is before Gilead. And so they're having this conversation with one another, and we see that they're having a great time. He started doing karaoke. He got her to come up and do a karaoke with him, had her drinking some champagne. So we see that she's very reserved, and she was into like the word and, Bible verses and things like that. She's not too far off from where she is now in Gilead. And then we learned through conversation that she was actually a family law attorney, but she didn't see the good. She didn't feel as though she was getting enough return on, putting these kids with good families. So she went to be a teacher so she can see more, a quick turnaround on what her impact is on society, how she's helping spread love and give love to those who might not have enough of it. So I was like, okay, you was a little attorney too. You was probably making the good bucks. But we also found out in the conversation that she was actually married before and that it didn't work out. She really doesn't. She just says they weren't right for each other. But I would have loved to see like what that had to do, how that shaped her to be who she was, what were the issues in her marriage. But, the principal and her, they having a good time. She brought them back to her place. I said, ooh, Lydia, you bringing people back for a little nightcap? And so then they end up kissing, making out. She starts filling all up on him. And I was just like, Lydia, not you. And so then he kind of pulls back when she's trying to initiate sex, and he says that he's not ready. You see that he still has his wedding ring on. It seems that he's been widowed. And so he's just not ready to go all the way there. And so that really does something to her, the rejection that she receives from him. And she feels that she's shown too much, that she was kissing him and doing all this stuff that she normally wouldn't do. And so that kind of flips a switch in her. And she then resents the mom for even making her feel that her finding love again or being with someone again, that could be a purpose. But did y'all catch when she was telling Lydia, when the mom was telling Lydia, I found somebody new, he has 2 kids, and he said he's gonna leave his wife soon. I said, ma'am, are you serious? Like, you messing with a married man with kids? Don't. I just didn't understand, but I was like, whatever. Oh, and then also too, when she's like, do you have a man or do you have a woman? And she looked at her like, bitch, excuse me? I was just unlimited. She was just asking questions she didn't know. But I think that also shows how, that they resent, like, the homosexuality, that they're very against it, and seeing her reaction, that you kind of see that she's always kind of had these beliefs that this is not something new, that she has just adopted out of nowhere with this new formation of, Gilead of its values. And so once that happens, we see that she ends up calling Child Protective Services to have the boy removed from the household, basically using everything that the mom told her in confidence as reasons as to why her household is unfit, as we're bringing in this title, unfit for Ryan to be there. And so they actually end up removing him from the home. And you can see that the principal is even like, do you really feel like this is necessary? Like, why are you doing this? And that even he has a look of disgust in his eyes for Lydia now. And so how him rejecting her led to her just basically punishing this woman, for her own insecurities and making her believe that she can have this different life. And so I like how the girl cursed her out. I was just like, you should have fought her. I would have fought her. You lucky that she was holding them, that they was holding her back, because baby, we would have had to fight it out, because it's just horrible that they ripped this child from this household. So we see that we then go back to Lydia, and she's talking with the other aunts, and they're trying to place different people. And so what I find interesting about this is they finally bring up race in, this episode, which is something that they really don't talk about in the TV series. And so when they try to place one of the black handmaids with the family, you know, she says, no, they requested they don't want any women of color in their household. And so it's one of the first times you see that there's some type of prejudice or discrimination that, like, hey, I don't want my kids to be mixed with like other races and things like that. And then how of Andy's people, how they really just, because she had this like baby that was stillborn, how they were just like, well, we don't want her either. And so she talks about how God could bless someone like June with 2 babies, and someone of Andy who is very faithful, very respectful, and follows all the rules, how God could do something like this to her. And so then she tries to start thinking about where did she go wrong with Joseph. And so she talks about how the commanders, when she put them in the Waterford's household, how they were an unfit family for her to be a part of, how she never had issues out of her until she was placed with the Waterfords, and she wants to prevent anything like that from happening again. So she then decides that she wants to remove June from the Lawrence's household because she feels as though it will be better for June. And Lydia is really trying to figure out how to get through to June, how to not have any more issues out of June. And so I think it's interesting how this whole unfit thing is coming up, and how Lydia feels as though personally responsible for all of the bad things that happens to the handmaids, how she needs to rectify these poor choices that she has made before. So we see all this come to a head when basically they're at the supermarket, and of Messi and June are together, and Janine tries to go talk to of Messi, and she is clearly distraught. She is really going through it right now. She's having a very hard time just dealing. You can tell that she's very on edge. And so when Lydia asks June, like, hey, can I have a word with you? And she basically tells her, like, I'm going to remove you from this household because I just don't think that they are a good fit for you. And so as she's talking to her, she's looking at Messi, almost trying to like psychologically play games with her, and how like she's talking about her, you know, because everyone's been whispering or being rude to her. And so she just can't take it anymore. And Janine tries to touch her, and she takes the can and she starts beating Janine. And so as the Guardians come to try to get her off of her, she ends up like hitting the guard with like whatever glass thing she had in her hand. He ends up getting, I guess, killed instantly because it like hit the glass, hit him there. Then she takes the gun and then she starts pointing at everyone. You can tell she's literally having a mental breakdown at this point. And then when she sees June, she points the gun to June, and June just has this weird look on her face. And then she looks at Lydia, and then she nods and she points the gun to Lydia. But before she can do that, pull the trigger, then basically the Guardians end up shooting of Messi, and then she falls to the ground. And June just has this look of excitement and happiness on her face. But I really felt a certain type of way. I thought that it was very interesting to see how June, who has ran away countless times, who has done all of these crazy things while she was pregnant, but never once did they try to kill June. They've always tried to find June to not bring harm to her or the baby, because the babies are the most important thing, but how they didn't even think twice about shooting of Messi, who is with child, okay? They didn't think twice. They just immediately shot her. And I think it's very interesting how this plays out, because, and for those of you like, Sharana, why are you making this about race? I think that is very apparent that of Messi, who has just really been having this mental breakdown, all of this psychological warfare that June has been doing to her, how she was treated, from how the handmaids treated her, when June has inflicted more harm upon all of the other handmaids compared to what of Messi did just to June. I think it's very interesting how they're treating these two different characters, how they forgave June, who got all of them burned as punishment for the last time that they tried to follow what June had to say, to how they just immediately started, you know, basically bullying her from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode, and how her life didn't matter, her child's life didn't matter, because they just shot her without thinking about it. And the reaction that Lydia has is like, oh no, like, what are you guys doing? Like, don't shoot her. I just thought that it was very interesting, and for one of the first times that we do explore race in this world of Gilead on this television series, we see that those hints of discrimination is still very alive and very apparent in Gilead and in this episode, as we see June, who has defied everyone at every step of the way, broken every single rule. Janine got her eye taken out. You know, people's tongues have got cut out. They've been burned. And the only thing that's ever really happened to June is she's been whipped on her feet. But I find it very interesting. And I just really have lost any shrivel of respect that I did have left for June. I just can't rock with her. She's way too privileged. She lives on a different set of rules compared to the other handmaids. And the fact that they all were basically complicit in carrying out this plan of bullying her, I just find it to be really absurd and interesting how June is just treated like she's just this privileged white woman who's a handmaid, and of Messy just didn't deserve what she got. I mean, yeah, I was still mad at her for how things played out, but I just think it was so disrespectful how they handled her character, how ultimately, how her life didn't matter to them, how her unborn child life didn't matter to them, that they would just immediately shoot her. I mean, hell, Emily ran over somebody with a car. She ran over someone with a car, and she still lived to tell the tale. So I just think it's so interesting how this black handmaid, kill her. We don't care. I'm gonna stop y'all. I'm gonna get off my little soapbox right now. I'm still really pissed. I don't care about June no more. She's dead to me. Sorry. I don't care about anything that happens to her. They can kill her next week. I'll be like, good riddance. Bye-bye. See you later. I'm just done. I'm interested to know what you guys' thoughts were about the episode. Did you see the elements of race, of discrimination between how they handle Messy compared to how they handle June throughout this episode? I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on it. But those are my quick thoughts on The Handmaid's Tale Season 3, Episode 8, Unfit. As always, my name is Sharona from Pay Your Weights, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And I love you guys 3000. I'll see you soon.